And can you put the agenda in the chat?
Yes.
Representative Patterson, you're the only one looking festive today, so congratulations.
Well, thank you. I'm trying as I end up the end of the week. Hopefully, I get to read tonight with LaJoy
Oh, good.
to improve.
Joy's going to be mad at me because I've been trying to get a meeting, with her, but I've been the problem. I've been running around all day today doing things. So she apologized on my behalf to LaJoy. I've already apologized too. She's going to be mad at me though. I don't want to be on LaJoy's bad side. It's not a good place to be.
It's not, but she's cool people. I think we got a quorum, so I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. Do we have a quorum? Yeah.
Definitely.
We
Yeah.
got a four.
Everybody.
3 out of 4. I think we got everybody. We got a whole
6 out of 6.
Okay, that works. We got our new student rep that's here rocking with us today. Tia's here too. So yeah, 6 out of 6. That's a good thing.
It is. So let's jump in. Welcome everyone to the State Level and Systems Policy Committee meeting. Today's December 21st. I'm going for the public who may be watching. I'm going to briefly read the agenda. We have a full agenda today, and then we'll be going through it one step at a time. We have established a quorum, so we are going to review the recommendations to the board for the DC school report card. We are then going to jump into 2 different sets of standards reviews. First, the financial literacy standards, and then the social and emotional learning standards. We will then debrief the artificial intelligence roundtable and talk about next steps that the board will be pursuing on that topic, followed by a brief review of the council's teacher retention hearings. And then the last resolutions that we will look at are the high school voter registration resolution, along with the changing the district's policy around parental leave for male students. And then wrapping up with the 2024 strategic goals of the committee and our meeting schedule before we adjourn. Any changes or recommendations to the agenda before we move forward?
Representative Williams, could we just briefly mention truancy when we're talking about the hearing debrief? Because there was an important one in that too.
And I sit on the Everyday Counts task force, so I have some thoughts on that too, also based off of the recent hearings as well. So happy to bring that into play there.
Okay, yeah, I just had some thoughts on it that I'll be brief about though.
You bet. All right. Kathleen, do you mind kind of starting us off with the general recommendations around the DC school report card?
Sure. So I am going to share my screen. But this is sort of modeled off of the STAR report card recommendations that the Assessments and Accountability Committee gave to the full board, that was then picked up and edited a little bit and then became a resolution. So telling OSSI, like, these are the things that the state board will be looking for in your final proposal, and when considering whether or not to approve it. So I wrote up the things that I heard from you all specifically that you shared in advance, as well as things from the different engagement sessions and that members had shared during the working session. And so there's just a little bit of an introduction, and then it goes into a list of 23 potential recommendations, which I've broken up the same way that they broke up the engagement sessions into like content, the summative score, and then the visual display. And so we're going to go through each of them, and my understanding, and President Patterson, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think you were on the committee, but the Accountability Assessments Committee like voted whether or not they were in support of each recommendation. Is that correct? Okay. I see you nodding. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I was looking for my unmute, but yes.
Yeah.
That's...
So I figured we could just kind of do the same thing here. And
Kathleen, would you like us to, just as you go through these, to save time, just if we have a concern, raise it, but then just vote in block on it, the resolutions, and then we can just do any one that people have issues with.
Sure. Yeah. And then for a couple of them, I had some questions for you all just to kind of check or like to get a little bit more clarity. And though there's some of the, I've highlighted a couple of those, but most of them I think are fairly straightforward. So I'll zoom in so you can see a little better. So the first one is just that all metrics should have a clear definition of what's being shown. It's a simple, and I guess I'll just read it. Simple and widely comprehensible language is important for making the DC school report card accessible to the most district residents. The text on a report card can be the biggest barrier to user understanding if it is too technical and opaque. Support families in understanding the DC school report card by avoiding eduspeak, simplifying language, providing context, and ensuring report cards and related resources are translated into many languages. And then here I'm referencing one of the panel testimonies that we got that kind of talked about that. The next one, hold on, I'm gonna zoom out a little bit or can I move you while they're blocking my screen? Okay. So this one is about the information sort of beyond what's required by ESSA that the state board would like to be included on the report card. Some of it is already on there, but is like doesn't have to be. And other things are people have asked to be so I've broken out those up into different categories. A lot of what I heard was academic and like program offerings. So specialized programs, AP, IB, like different advanced course offerings, a full list of the extracurricular offerings, because a lot of times it's full of them, sort of well-rounded. Jen, can you check in with Fraser? Because he is calling me. The amount of instructional time in social studies, science, arts, world languages, health, and physical education. So right now, physical education is on there, but these were just some of the indicators of well-rounded education. Indicate whether the school.
Rachel's calling me too as well, so I'm gonna answer.
Yeah. Okay.
I can
Safe
call him,
pass-
Representative
yeah.
Patterson. I'll give him a call. Continue, Kathleen.
So safe passage, and then so specialized instructional spaces are sort of the things that we've been hearing under academic and program offerings. Also the school climate. Oh, this is not in the right spot. School. What? School climate survey data. I had teacher retention here and it's now on. So I'm going to add it back in. Yeah, and then I had other stuff here. I don't know. And I know, Ben, you had said demographics or data. You said demographics, retention, experience, and one other thing. So we put that list here. And then I don't know if you can remind me what the other thing was.
I'll check my email.
Yeah, but and then you
I
had
think
said
diversity.
there was 4 things.
Diversity, credentials.
Okay, credentials. That's what it is.
Yep.
And so I had it in there, and I must have deleted it by mistake. And then you had said, this is one of my questions. Request clarity on what OSSI means by teacher retention data not codified in SBOE approval resolution. I didn't know what you meant by that.
Yeah, that might be a good place to just briefly check in. So I wasn't at the last working session, but in reviewing OSSI's slides, I saw that on a slide that they had presented. Did anyone know what they had meant by that? I took that language directly from the slide.
Was it specific about the teacher retention data, or was it like all of it?
No, it was about the school report card. Generally.
But like, okay, yeah, that's sort of what is approved as like requirements already versus like these are things that may be on the report card, but like We
And I-
didn't say they had to be on the report card.
And I have to remember, I think what they're also talking about, in our previous resolution, we didn't state that teacher retention data had to be on there. Is that,
No,
and I think that's what they're talking about, is that we didn't codify it in our previous resolution.
yeah, so I think by doing this, that
Right.
addresses that.
Right. So that's what they're talking about.
I wasn't sure what you meant. So I feel like
Right.
that's resolved, Ben. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good with it.
Yes.
So this was something that Aussie had suggested, the special education performance report data.
Yep.
And then student to teacher and student to adult ratios. I can't remember who said this to me, but I wasn't sure what was meant by student to adult, if there was like a specific, it was like any adult, or if they meant to like add principals or like administrators and then counselors and other things into there. I don't know if anyone has any.
Are they just speaking about in the particular classroom? Is there, what's the ratio of student to teacher or assistant ratio?
So if we don't know, I would say to take it out. But I just didn't know if any of you had thoughts about it.
I mean, well, the importance of the student to adult ratio to have both would be that if you're lacking other support staff because you're cutting that back, you're gonna put more pressure on your teachers to have to cover things that normally they wouldn't be covering. And that was a big concern of a lot of teachers in Ward 3, was that because they were trying to preserve teaching positions, there were other positions that they would sacrifice, but then the teachers would have to then make up those duties. So I think both could be useful data, even though for some schools it may be irrelevant. For
Okay.
others, it may be important. I don't think there's a harm in having both pieces of information.
And then there was a lot of people who asked for information about the staff that are on site. So nurses, whether that's full-time or part-time, or allied health professionals, social workers, counselors, and school psychologists, restorative justice coordinators, SEL coordinators, and wellness coordinators, and then interventionists, reading specialists, and librarians. And I didn't know whether people were interested in the number, just yes or no, whether they're there, or a ratio, or some combination of that.
I mean, I think hours on site are important, and then also maybe a ratio, if that's possible, Kathleen, to have both. Because like for your larger high schools, like Jackson Reed, you may want to have, even more than one health professional, but other places, we're just trying to scrape together enough hours to have somebody there for emergencies at the smaller elementary schools. So
Okay.
the nurse thing is a big issue for parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just going to get worse. But as long as it's just data, because I don't want to penalize any schools that don't have one, but that's dire. Trying to find nurses, there's a shortage and everything.
Okay.
That's going to be dire. Even if they put it on a report card,
Yeah.
may not be true.
Why don't we flag this one for debate, just so we can kind of work through that later. And then just keep going through them for like efficiency, and then we can return to ones where people are
Right.
have
Okay.
questions. And then extended reporting on post-secondary pathways. So currently it's just whether or not they are enrolled in a post-secondary program, but other states report other things in addition, so it's not limited like that. And then this is my like very basic analysis that I got through from the survey that we got last night. We got the data. So on the question of like, what would you most be looking for? I tried to like everyone just kind of said them differently, but I tried to combine.
You tried to find themes.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think we have most of the ones that are at like the top list. I think we do. I just wanted to kind of show like as either required or things that were like suggested. Um, and then, well, I guess this SEL one. But, yeah, so some of the ones where like one or two people suggested it, we don't have. And so we can discuss whether there's other things, but I also want to be cognizant of like making sure there's not so much data that it's overwhelming versus while also like meeting the needs that people have. And so I think we have all of them down to here.
The one that, as you went down, was before and after care, they did not want that, or it's just low?
It's just not that many people suggested it. So this is like the number of people who had mentioned it.
Yeah, because I think that
It's
could
not that other people said like, no, I don't want it. It's just like they didn't bring it up.
That made my top 9 for Ward 3, so I would love to be able to keep that one on, because a lot of people,
Yeah.
same,
they did
same
mention
here.
this.
Same here,
Yeah, and
because
that's
at who responded from east of the river, and I always hear before and after care is
have
pivotal
that here.
selection.
And it's on there now, so I think people sometimes
Okay.
are like not thinking of
Okay.
whether or not, because it's like already there. So do I need to mention it? Yeah.
Mention it so they'll keep it there.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So I will share this with you. Sort of like, again, I had like less than a day to look at it, so I didn't get to all the questions, and it's very rough. But so to give you an idea,
Yeah, thanks,
might be
Kath.
good to like move
What
on.
what comes after this? Yep.
So just like moving on to different recommendations. So reporting the same data for DCPS and charter schools, there's like one or two instances where there are things on, DCPSs that are not on the charter ones, and mostly it's about the teachers. So I've been hearing people say like, hey, put the same stuff on both. And then ESSA requires schools to report like financial data, and I couldn't find it on the current report card. So the recommendation would be to add it if it is not there, or to like clearly label it. And even if it's like linked on the report card somewhere,
Financial data like
like per pupil expenditures of different kinds of funds. So that's like in ESSA, it says that should be on the state LEA and school report cards.
okay.
So I think it at least needs to be linked, but I like looked and couldn't find it on the current one.
Okay.
So the recommendation is to add it if it's not there, or make it a little bit easier to find if it is there, because people should be able to find it. So it's a complaint I heard a lot when the new report cards were released, but to have up-to-date high-resolution photos of each school building. There's a number of people who were saying that the photos were out of date, or there's some where it's like really grainy and you can't tell. So it's like less of a data thing, I guess, but a lot of people were sharing that at that last engagement session. This also was coming from the engagement session, the third one, but prominent text to inform the users how recent the data is and like when it was updated, like when it's from. I think some people were confused about that, and it doesn't really say on the report card like this is the 2022 park data, or like this is the report card for the 2020 22-23 school year. And so if you don't know that, you might not be able to figure it out.
So question in that aspect, does that necessarily have to be on the actual report card, or as the
It could be like on the front page. It could be
page 2 going into report cards, period. Like this data is drawn from this particular, year of data.
Yeah, I didn't really specify where.
Just as opposed to just putting it there. Okay.
Yeah. And then a lot of people didn't like this, which is on each individual school, each DCPS school's report card, which has like their own data, and then also for certified and in-field teachers compares them. People thought it didn't really make sense to add to individual school pages. Because the school is just that one, but to put it on maybe the LEA one instead.
This was
And
just
a number
there
of people
for
said like this was
DCPS schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, that would be ridiculous because charter schools don't need to hire certified teachers. So why would we just be reporting that for for half of DC's, students in schools? So I think if this were going to be there, then my recommendation would be like you do it for the entire district.
Yeah. So there's a separate one that is like the DCPS and charter should be the same thing. But I think people were saying specifically like this bottom portion that says like for this school it's this, and then comparing it to the high and low poverty schools. People were confused about that being on like the individual school profiles.
Yeah, to me that's overly technical.
And then this also came out of the third engagement session. But a lot of the data is reported in sort of artificial groups. So for example, like approaching expectations or better. And so those are students who are like within several different categories that we've lumped together, or like meeting expectations or better. And people were saying that was confusing. And so this is what it looks like now on the DC school report card. And then this is like one from Florida, which I think is much clearer. And we can get into like the colors and stuff, but I think for people were suggesting to add to like not group students in this way, and they found it very confusing.
It is.
So just kind of like showing the breakdown would be simpler. And then this is the last content recommendation. And it is also from that third engagement session. We're asking, because you can look at student groups for like students with disabilities or ELLs or like students who are economically disadvantaged, and they were asking to see students in the other groups, so students who are not economically disadvantaged, students who are not English learners, to be able to like compare those. Because right now you can't see that on there. And then, so for the summative score, there is more questions. And so this is just from, there was a multiple choice question on the survey that said, where do you want to report the summative score? And you could choose up to two, the top of the page, the middle of the page, the bottom of the page, or on a different page. And we had exactly the same number of people say the top of the page and a different page. So
Wow.
that's interesting. And
hey, Kathleen, just I appreciate the summary. A question for you. I think just flagging for our chairs here that I think you did, and you, Kathleen, I think you did a great job. I think this is the first committee meeting that I've had homework like this to do in advance and make sure that I sent by a certain date, and I really appreciate that, so we can use these meetings really efficiently around what questions we actually want to discuss. As you go through, Kathleen, I think it's less helpful for me, at least, to review the findings and more helpful to take this time to think about what are the open questions that we need to discuss versus, do you want us to actually do you want to actually send this over and we redline and send you back feedback, or what is
sure.
the
I can do that, or I can just skip to where there are questions.
I don't want to make a decision for everyone on the and the chairs, but
I'm more apt to go to questions as far as sending something forward.
I support that too.
Okay.
Go immediately to the questions to be
Sure. So this is what, based on what I had kind of been hearing and before I looked at this, I'm proposing, but I guess the question is like, how does it sound? For the report card's accountability designation to be on the main page, and then linking it to a separate page where it says like explore, like it does with all the other data, where you can view the summative score as well as like all of this information that people were saying they wanted, with how it's calculated. And
Right, and this kind of gets back to
yeah, I know that like
what
variance
we're
is like a
expecting
question.
to kind of come out of this. So I think there's some things that we want that I think the committee will be in unanimous support of, and then maybe some that aren't, and we just really want to, or in my view, the goal is to be able to document that today, to be able to then
Yes.
report back to the board during our working session.
Yeah.
Does that align with your aim as well, Representative Patterson?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right, great. So yeah, so let's just kind of get a sense of how people feel about that, given the split difference of the summative score there. So, and if we're not in agreement, then we can note that, and if we are, then great. Did you? I just saw numbers there, Kathleen. Did they just
Oh,
disappear?
I'm sorry. I removed them because people said I can come back.
Yeah. So, my view is to have the summative score on a separate page. I don't feel like we need to necessarily debate it, but just kind of want to identify that. How do other members feel on that issue?
Can I ask you a question, and maybe to both you and Kathleen on it? I mean, my thought was we were gonna have a main page and you'd click on that. One of the links could be to summative score, so parents could compare factors across schools if they were looking to compare, the factors in that they were interested about. So I mean, I don't think you need to have the score listed on the main page, but I just want to make sure we're not making this so hard to find that parents that do want to compare school to school have that ability. I mean, it's not an issue in my ward. Not one person mentioned the summative score, but I just want to give other parents that option. I don't want to go through this exercise to hide something that's federally required and that people will look at. I just don't want to also overemphasize it. So how do you foresee this working? Kathleen, maybe? I don't know. Did we just lose Kathleen?
I think we did.
Uh-oh.
But until
I
she comes
hope-
back on. Until she comes back on, I did want to hear also from Alistair, what was your thoughts before I chime in about the summative score?
I think my constituents are similar to Eric's.
Okay.
So in
Okay.
terms of that breakdown, like, were you both thinking that you would want to see like a raw score relative to the district average on like another score, like, or because the thing that I've heard from a lot of residents that they would like to compare is not necessarily like, this school gets this number and this school gets this number, but being able to compare qualitative aspects, like this school has, in terms of attendance, a 90% attendance rate, and this school has an 85% attendance rate, or this school has 20 extracurricular programs and this school has just 10, is based off of what I'm hearing. So I do think there is some clarity there as to the different options that I'm conceptualizing are like the summative score can compare one raw score to another raw score to other schools. And to me, that's the same thing as what the stars were, and I'm against that. Then a raw score to a district average of other schools, which I think has some support amongst other board members as well. And then the third option being like a comparative tool where we're not comparing summative scores, but we would be comparing features of schools to other features of other schools.
And I'd like to let our vice president chime in as well. I believe he has his hand raised.
I think he needs to be on as a panelist, doesn't he? I don't think he's a
Yes.
panelist. Can we let him on as a panelist?
Um,
Who has the ability to let him on as a panelist so he can speak?
Probably, Kathleen, are you frozen?
I think we may have lost.
She came back, but now unless she's got her hand in that position permanently, I think she's frozen.
Think so too. So while we're waiting to be able to get to hear from Vice President O'Leary on that,
And we haven't heard from our two students as well.
yeah,
So they
so
chime in as well.
If it should default to Executive Director Butler, if it's not, oh, there it goes. I think we're looking to bring Representative O'Leary on.
Into the conversation. He had his hand raised. Says his audio won't connect, joining by his phone.
right, while we're waiting on that, do either of our student reps want to weigh in on this issue of what you've heard from students or families or how the summative score should be displayed?
I think that the idea of the summative score works as like a single number, so you don't have to scroll all the way through. Because when I sent the survey to a couple of my friends, and it's long, like the report card is long, and I think that for someone who might not be totally invested in it, it's a hassle to scroll all the way through. And I think the summative score helps in that sense, and that it's very concise. But I also get the issue with the metrics being kind of flawed. Um, so if there's a different way to give a single score, I know it's hard to incorporate certain nuances into just a number, but I think the value is can't really be ignored in that it's a summary, you know.
Okay, I appreciate that. Tia, do you also have a comment?
Hi, I'm sorry for the noisy background. I'm on my way home from school, but I agree with Ben. I think the metrics behind the score itself might be a bit wonky, I guess a bit. But like I agree with its convenience factor. Because again, a lot of the students, but mainly the families that I've interacted with, have said that they also have to scroll down and gone straight to the score to see kind of or get a gist of what they thought the school they were researching about was like. So if there's a way to maybe highlight both the key features of a school and the summative score, I think that'd be good. But I think it is important to kind of just focus on the certain aspects of a school that are important within that school community, if that makes sense, versus primarily the score itself.
So for me, and I wanted to listen to everyone else first before chiming in, so it wouldn't be kind of setting a narrative. For me, after doing this for so many years, I worked on this particularly and all the debate around the summative score. For me, as long as we make very prominent where to go to find the summative score and not try to hide it, I don't believe it has to be on the front page. But I do want to make sure that families who want to go and find that summative score can find it very easily for them, So that's basically how I feel about it. I just want to make sure that families can find it if they want to. I don't want it to be, as I've said throughout this whole process for me, that score to be an indictment on a particular school, because they don't get a good score or something like that. And people use it almost like a restaurant type of thing where if their score is low or something like that, they're penalized for that as as a as opposed to it being something that shows where support is needed. So for me, very easy accessibility to the score, but it does not have to be on the front page.
Well, hi, everybody. I've been listening to you all, and waving my hand, raising my hand and everything, but I don't know what happened. I think you all know how I feel about the summative score. But I think what Representative Patterson is saying makes a lot of sense, that you can go find it. It's easy to go find it. I thought was really sort of intrigued about how they put the summative score on the newest report card. Because if you had to really go, you had to really go find it on the newest report card. And then when you got to that page, it didn't tell you anything except numbers. It didn't even tell you what the summative score was. So I would think that a lot of people, and I know there are people that are really interested in how their school did on a standardized test. I'm not interested in that at all. But I think we can find a meeting point to make sure that it's not, it doesn't need to be, if it's a report card, all right? When we got our report cards at the end of the year, that's how we did during the year. And I don't understand why the report card comes out in December of the following year when a third or a quarter of the students in high school are represented on that report card, but they're not even in the school anymore. They've already graduated. So I think that the report card should, I really like the thing that you were talking about the presentation is very important, about what the school offers, about how the school really looks. Because as you said, some of the pictures on the report card, or even the ones on the my school DC or whatever it is, those buildings don't even exist. I mean, some of our newer buildings are still the older buildings. But I think that this revolution in the report card should really report what the school, if they're coming out in December, people aren't making choices about what school their children are going to go to in August, in December. I think the report card ought to come out earlier so that people can choose that, because it's not really the right information about the school you're sending your child to anyway. And I think the summative score, as far as on the new report card, doesn't even tell you what it is. It's just a summative score and it has a point number. That's
Right.
all it says.
And I think to that point, Vice President O'Leary, like, and maybe we could just get some up and down votes, with Representative Patterson, Chang, and Goulet. I want to underscore that point of just like defining what the summative score is. So maybe we can make are we comfortable making a recommendation that we just define how the summative score is calculated? All right, so Representative Goulet, are you good with that as well?
I am. I mean, wouldn't it just, I mean, it's calculated, the feds tell us to calculate it, so we're just explaining what goes into that calculation.
Yeah, and that should just be somewhere where the public, if they want, can
Yeah.
click or see without it being too wonky. Student representatives, are you in agreement with that as well?
Yeah.
I agree. I think that'd be the best.
That works. Good.
Great. And then I did not disagree with anything that Kathleen presented in terms of the other qualitative indicators of the report card, whether it be the climate data, you know, the teacher retention information, or the program offerings. So did anyone have any part of those aspects that they would want to know more of? Or I'm curious if we could get a general consensus vote that we would like to make these recommendations to the board.
I think we really need to push for the report card to define the student population rather than just a number of things. Because I know that at Cardozo or at Roosevelt, and you know, we don't have
Are
more
you
of
speaking
the.
about disaggregating the student population? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that just the fact that there are at Cardozo, when I retired from Cardozo, about at least a third of our students were special ed. And at
Okay.
least, and more than a third of our students, almost half of the students were ELL students. But that doesn't mean that they are not real students. And I think that you know, there are some schools that don't have, that have hardly any ELL students.
Mm-hmm.
So you're asking for some type of display that shows just some disaggregation of who might be, you know, at risk. I hate
Yeah,
to
I don't have a problem with that.
all those type of things, you know, ELAs, all that.
Yeah, we were,
LA.
but it's all, you know, the people, uh, but it doesn't have to be like a badge of dishonor that we have a lot of students who are Title I students, or that we have a lot of students who are ELL students.
Right.
That's what makes the body work
Mm-hmm.
and gives the soul to the school, so to speak. I just think that this, since they're talking about sort of an
I have,
interactive, they're working on an interactive
Yeah.
one, right?
I like the inclusivity that you're trying to.
Question?
I can appreciate that, Vice President. It's like you just want to make sure that there's inclusiveness as far as what the body looks like and tells the story. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah, and because even if you look at the beginning of the report card that just came out, at the beginning of the report card, there's like a 1 paragraph mission statement. You know, that's, you know, that everybody's mission statement looks, you know, if I were writing the mission statement for my school, I would want to invite people to come because this is who we are rather than what the mission is or whatever. And there's nothing, is there, Kathleen, about, do you have to have a mission statement right at the beginning of the report card? Does ESSA ask for that?
No, I think, I guess my question is, it sounded to me like you're asking for like demographics about the students enrolled. My understanding is that's already on there. So I'm wondering what you think.
But
Yeah,
it's
just
on there
consider-
just as someone, I think it might have been
Honestly,
Ben that
Cardozo
said,
as your example.
it's on there, but it doesn't, it's just numbers. It's like the summative score is on the report card, but it's just numbers. It doesn't tell you what it sums even. It's just a score. And I think that you're right that information is on there, but it doesn't tell you anything about it. You know, that we're a thriving educational institution with students from all over the world, blah, 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 or whatever. Or we have special programs for those of our students who have special needs, rather than just talk about our goal in life is to.
It's my understanding that the school can put whatever they want up here in the message.
Right.
You know, I don't.
So
that may
we
be
can't
true.
like make the schools change it to. I mean, I guess we could, but like,
I don't know. If you look at all those messages, they look like a template. They don't look like a vision. It just looks like a template.
Right. And I think this reminds me of just, you know, even the school profile page that Empower Ed gave, where there was just a section that says like what makes this school unique. And each
Yeah.
school could have a couple sentences, you know, that they're able to share, you know, whether it be programming, whether it be philosophy, whether it be vision. So I'm happy to make that recommendation as a committee. Are there any other issues of contention that we have as a committee, or issues that we need to clarify?
I don't think we have any other tensions.
so I might have missed it. I apologize. My computer just closed the Zoom and I don't know why. But I wanted to ask if you had a preferred way of displaying the summative score, because we talked about different examples, and on the survey where there was different examples that people responded to, and then we had people respond to different examples during the second engagement session. Does
Right.
the committee want to make a suggestion on that?
I
Like
think
what it
that
actually
from
looks
what
like.
I heard, and feel free to jump in at any additional members or student reps, is that there isn't complete consensus on this. However, there are some unifying principles that we don't want this to be hidden, that we want it to be clearly accessible, and that we want for people to know where they can click on it if they can get more.
Right.
If they want to know more information. So I think some members are wanting that to be a button that will take them to a different page. And then some people might want that to be located, not in a prominent place, but also in an easily identifiable place on the school's profile.
So Kathleen, for me, in agreement with my co-chair, what you have right here, what you're displaying on the screen. So if there was a button that led to something of this nature right here, I,
Yeah.
I, I can appreciate this because this will allow people to know where to go to get a summative score, but also it has color. It's pretty self-explanatory. If I'm looking at it correctly, my eyes are a little bad as I get older.
All right.
But the smaller parts down there that explains, what goes into that score, the coloring,
Yeah.
that's very helpful. That is very helpful because those are the things that would be based on the metrics, right? And so, just long as we have something that displayed, this is where you can go to get this summative score, and then this page explain what the summative score was. I like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I do too.
So
See,
we don't want to like recommend a specific thing, but just say those principles.
Yes, that's where I am. Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
The other thing too, is someone who came in before there was a chancellor. When we found out immediately about this report card and the star rating, and the fact that we knew which schools were going to be 5-star schools or 4-star schools or 3-star schools, and then 1-star schools. I mean, that was what soured everybody to the report card to begin with, and especially the summative score, because that summative score was weighted so much towards the park test that we knew that there were going to be schools who would never get more than 1 star. And I think that with the new, even this year's report card had a different tone to it. And with these kinds of things happening to it, especially with our input, it can be a report card that at least reports what the school is about. And it's not punitive. And that's what the problem was with the star rating and with the summative score. It was very punitive. And our students don't deserve to be punished for being students in certain places or at certain times.
Agreed. And Representative Goulet and Representative Chang, I want to ask you just as the Ward 2 and Ward 3 representatives in terms of, because I imagine we're going to get questioned by the rest of the board members just around like the idea of the comparative tool.
I have a one about that further down if we want to keep going.
Yeah, if you could head there.
Okay.
I know I recognize
because we can
have a
skip this
full-
if we don't want to decide on a display. Just because I was talking about what people talked about, but if we don't want to do that, that's fine. This one is based off of Betsy Wolf's testimony where she was asking people to asking the score to acknowledge the margin of error and like not report it as precisely. It's like rather than to a 1/10 of a percentile, which like makes it look like we're really sure that we are like extremely specifically like precise. So like report it as like a units place. Just to and like acknowledge in there somewhere that there is margin of error in some of these. And then in the format and visual presentation, calling on OSSI to pay attention to disability accessibility and like user testing throughout the process. Making it clear that that homepage is the state report card, because I feel like that's not clear at all. When you click on it, it says, I'd like to know more about a specific topic. That doesn't make it sound like you're looking at the state level data. That makes it sound like you're learning about like what the metrics are. Am I only sharing the Word document or am I sharing my whole screen?
You're sharing the Word document.
Okay, hold on.
But that's fine.
It's like, this doesn't look like it is the state's report card if you click on this stuff. But this is actually the state level data. And so clarifying that. Adding a feature for users to search by ward or zip code or browse in a map, like on My School DC. Because currently you can just kind of like search by name. And then here I have the question about people said a feature to allow users to compare by indicator.
Can I weigh in on this one, Kathleen? Because this is the only thing that I really care about.
This one?
Yes, I read through the whole thing. This is the one thing I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Is what people want is they want this to be searchable. So
Yeah.
what we want to be able to do is if, people want to just click on an attractive homepage for their school, they can see everything neatly there, and that's great. But if, let's say I'm a parent who's wants to check out some programs or check out a variety of schools, I want to be able to design this so somebody can search like across a geographic area like you have there. So let's say, I'm only going to search Ward 3.
Like this.
Yeah, perfect, just like that.
Okay.
And then you can search by grade, but then you can search by any one of those items there. So like, if you're somebody who really cares about before and after care, or by school nurses or something like that, you can say, my kid's in 6th grade and I've got another one in 3rd grade. I want to see all the data on, like, let's say special ed programs across all the schools, or even I want to see the summative score across all the schools. But the search criteria will let you compare multiple schools for whatever you care the most about. And it could be anything. It could be special classes. It could be AP classes. It could be school nurse. It could be teacher ratio. But you'd be able to search that and have that data displayed. I think that's what parents have indicated to me they want to be able to see, is to be able to conveniently search, compare schools for the data item they care about. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's very sensible.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because that's important. That's what a parent is going to be searching for, is how does this deal with my child?
Right.
Right. That's why if you look, I don't know if y'all have spent time with the new DC report card, but I did. And a lot of the schools have, it's not even a skeletal system of what kind of programs they have in the building. And I know they have programs in the building. And I'll talk about high schools. I know the high schools have all these different kinds of programs, both athletic programs and all these other stuff. If you look at the descriptions of the schools on their new report card, they're like lacking of things. And I think there needs to be some kind of persuasion from OSSI, I guess, to the schools, since they have all the schools under their wing, to make sure that they give them as much information about the school as can, rather than just, fill in the blanks kind of thing. And we could, I mean, I know that our representatives are going to be at that, we'll be talking to OSSI, that, to push them to, make this a report of the school.
Yeah, I think we have recommendations about like adding all of that stuff. So
Good.
noted, recorded.
And to
on there.
move us along, I think
Yeah.
I just want to underscore kind of what Representative Goulet was saying there, because that usability and like being able to search is what's most useful to families. Like, and so I was talking with Representative Best the other day, and he was even just wondering, like, why do we have two different sites, right? Like, why do we have My School DC and why do we have this? And then why do we have such different functionality on both of them? And I think that's a conversation that we can kind of table for another time. But in
Yeah,
terms
that same conversation. And as you said, we can table it, but the thing is that we want to make sure that the report card is as appealing as the My School DC one is, in the sense of they use that to really compare schools, and the report card is kind of bland. So I know we can talk about, a little bit about this display later and everything like that, but I definitely agree with you that it needs to be search friendly, it needs to be user friendly, it needs to be attractive, and it needs to be the one that everybody goes to. Or even with My School DC, I believe when he and I talked, it's like that one should actually go to the report card. Like we have all these various report cards that are out there. You go to DCPS, you get something of a school, you get a narrative of the school. You go to My School DC, you get another narrative, and then you come to the report card and you get a third one, and they're all kind of different in their appeal and their approach. So definitely we can table it for now, but I get what you're saying. What else do we have to do? Because we spent almost a whole hour on the report.
Yeah.
What else is needed so that we can be conscious of everybody's time?
Yeah. So this one, there was kind of a question again around the navigation like on the school page. So people didn't like that, like by default, this, which is like the navigation feature, is closed.
Yeah, 100%.
And that like you can't kind of jump to what it is you want. And we could propose that this be open by default. I think it might be easier if we propose it is like a sidebar that like follows you, so you could jump around and say like, I'm scrolling, actually I want to click on up here on like the menu that I have on the side to go to attendance or to go to achievement or to go to programs or to go to whatever.
Kathleen, as everyone knows, I'm computer illiterate, but isn't this what you're saying right now sounds so simple? And there are so many people that know how to do the design and all these other things. Because I want to get on there and find stuff, but I need direction for it. Okay. There are a lot of our parents who need direction for how to navigate it. If they know how to use computers and all that other stuff, that's one bucket. But there's a big bucket of other people who have no idea about, and if it says you can follow this thing and everything like that, and if you have children, they know how to do it. But but that's, we need to push for that because they're talking about, I mean, if you think about the first time we talked about the report card, it was like pedestrian compared to what we're talking about right now. Because we want it to be we want it to be a living object. And it was different.
So to sort of kind of get us to like move along, but like also acknowledge that, do we like one of these recommendations? So either just make this top thing open by default or like transition it to a sidebar.
I think the sidebar would be my preference. I mean, those are the most important, some of the most important things, and then it can just be user friendly.
Okay.
Yeah. User
Any
friendly.
objections?
No objections.
All right.
Kathleen,
This
how many
question, do you
total,
want-
how many total things do we
We
have?
have like a couple more, but this is the last one that I think is like a question.
Okay.
Do you want to suggest revising the order that stuff is reported on the report card? You can say you don't want to make a suggestion, but
We're basing that off what you're showing us on the screen right now. This is the order, the current order right here.
yes, this is the current order that the sections go in.
Thank you.
Do we want to propose it be different, or we can propose it stay the same, or no comment?
What does school profile mean?
That's like all that information at the top, like this.
It's what you basically said. They should give some type of a narrative,
Yeah.
Vice President. That's their kind of like their story that they
Right. Okay.
special about their school.
Yeah.
That's their section that say that, their message.
I'll speak up first and say I like the order. I think it looks good. I mean, I could always move a couple things around, but they would just be immaterial. It looks great to me.
I'm in an agreement as well with Representative Goulet. I mean,
All right, great.
we're fine.
All right. I'm gonna move
Hearing
us-
no objections. Basically like rethink what is in those weird like text box with the numbers versus what's in a chart and base it off what people are saying is the most important information. Which is one of the like accessibility and visualization things that Jonathan Schwabish recommended. Indicating like the district average on the main page, you can go and like onto the details page and find that, like explore this part. But people didn't know, like, is 38.7, like, is that a decent number? They didn't know. So just like having, it could be like a line, or it could be just like a number at the top, to contextualize that information. Making how data is suppressed more consistent, because it's just different, and I don't know why. Making these like feeder schools that are listed a hyperlink to that school's profile. Because right now it's just plain text, but you should be able to click on this one, which I think was J.O. Wilson, and click on it and then go to Stuart Hobson's page. And then for some reason, these like bar graph overlap when there's like group bar charts, and it makes it hard to read the numbers. So just don't do that.
Thank you, Kathleen.
That's very helpful.
Just of time, I'm gonna say that all other items in this document, we can give feedback via email, because we have
Sounds good.
we have a full agenda to continue to get through.
Yeah, I think this is like the like the biggest thing. So
Okay.
yeah.
Go right ahead, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thanks. So let's move ahead to the financial literacy standards.
Yeah.
Kathleen, did you also have a document for that?
Yeah. So
Are
I'm
we
gonna,
Are we
I
voting
think
on
these
that
are like
now?
less controversial. So I'm gonna speed through them.
Moment, Mr. Co-Chair, Representative Goulet wanted to know what we
Sorry,
voted.
are we voting on those items to approve that then? So we can just send those recommendations?
Yeah, I think there was, hold on, that's the wrong thing.
Just procedurally.
You can like vote on them, acknowledging the sort of comments and amendments that were made that I haven't like made in the moment, but like we can make afterwards.
Well, I mean, yeah, would leave to staff to make changes. I just wasn't clear whether
Yeah.
we need to vote to send this, or whether or not we just
So-
kind of reach general agreement and then we send it. But we're sending it, right? Like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, like the clean final version. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so
What
you could vote with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes, and that'll let you make all the shifts around that you need.
Exactly. Exactly, Representative. So what we'll do is we're basically voting, and we can do that real quick, to say that we're voting on the recommended recommendations that we have here to be our recommendations.
Mhm.
Okay? And we can just take like, a quick vote on, with revisions, we are recommending that this committee move forward the recommendations upon revisions.
Yeah,
Coach, are you
I'm in
voting that?
agreement with that. So did you want to put it like you have the things highlighted above, Kathleen, where
Yeah.
we're definitely not going to vote on individual items.
No. So
Right.
I'll take that out
Right.
where it says like we vote on the individual ones.
Right,
And then like with the comments that you all made on some of the other ones.
exactly.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
to your
I would
point-
trust the chairs, so if we vote with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes, Kathleen can make the changes. She can just share it with the co-chairs. If you guys are good with it, I'm good with it. I don't need to see it again, so that way we can just move quickly through this.
Great.
All right. Do you want to call a roll, one of the co-chairs?
Go right ahead, Ben.
All right. Representative Goulet,
Aye.
Representative Patterson,
Aye.
Representative Chang,
Aye.
Representative Yarkin,
Aye.
Representative Washington,
Aye.
and
Okay.
I'm also aye, so it is unanimous.
Great. Yeah, so I have recommendations on financial literacy, which again I feel like are much less controversial. So I think should be much quicker. So just starting with sort of
Can you give
positive
us a
feedback.
sense of the whole document first with the overview, and then we can
Yeah.
kind of
So
the
there's
co-chair can decide how
sort
to
of-
facilitate it.
Sure. 4 sort of positive things calling OSCE out in terms of like the development and the relationships to the national personal financial literacy standards and some of the changes they've made. And then a number of revisions that go, so they're suggested that kind of go through like the format, like making sure that the driving questions are like clear and consistent and like are helpful, improving the language, and then kind of revising some of the content, in terms of taking out some of the stuff that overlapped with social studies and was more like economics focused, and then adding things that are more like practical that were not in there.
Got it.
And
Kayla,
then
was
like some
this
things about
something-
improving the clarity of the language.
Was this something that was shared prior, or is this something that other?
No, because I had a day to do it,
Got it. Okay.
but I can share it now.
Yeah, so I don't think that in terms of best practice, like we're gonna be able, we'll have to talk about like processes as a committee to ensure that committee members have time to review these things moving forward. I was envisioning things more as like a short presentation based off of individual committee feedback. But if so let's
I mean, I think if, going forward, we can do pre-work earlier, then I can finish this earlier and share it.
That's true, but I think the
yeah.
bigger issue for me is the format, and in terms of like how we discuss things is different than what we end up sending to OSSI or to other board members. Like it's unfeasible.
That again is going to take like more time because there is functionally one work day between now and the working session. So like for me to create a presentation and also the memo, like
Right, and
considering that,
talk about that.
I couldn't have done that.
Right, and that's a particular thing for this, given the timing of this meeting and the upcoming working session, but that's not going to be a situation that will apply to every committee meeting moving forward.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so I thoroughly reviewed the financial literacy standards. I know Representative Chang, you had also kind of weighed in. There were particular revisions on particular standards based off of feedback from various financial literacy teachers that I talked to. Are there
all of the feedback from you and Representative Chang are in here. Maybe not like verbatim, but like combined with other stuff or like made a little bit, rather than saying like change this one, saying like here's our theme and then these are the examples. Yeah.
Got it. So let's start with the student reps and then we'll go to members. So student reps, are there any additional points of feedback that you have at this time for how to revise the financial literacy standards?
I didn't really see anything that I thought needed to be revised, but I would like to see how it would be implemented because reading those standards, it was hard to understand how some of those could be enacted easily.
Yeah, so I think this one speaks to that a little bit about like just adding more narrative to the document about like, what is this? Like, what are you looking?
Representative Washington, anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think I have any additional recommendations.
Thank you. And I guess that what about other members, Representative Goulet, Patterson, Chang? Any other comments or feedback for the draft standard so far?
I've read through everyone else's as they come through in the emails and everything, so I'm good. I have no additionals.
Yeah, and again, the points you guys made were good. I support that. I think the key is going to be how do we implement this, and having the additional narrative there about class by class, how we get this done, I think is important. So I think you've covered the important things. I think the standards are a good start, but I think this makes it stronger. So I'm prepared to support this today. I think it really looks great.
Thank you both.
And I appreciate both Representative Williams and Representative Chang for your work on it, for sure.
Thank you. And I think one point for the committee to consider moving forward based off of the panel was whether or not we want to make a recommendation that financial literacy be a requirement. Right now I think it's not every student in the district is getting this type of instruction. Right, so seeing if it's a credit class or a half credit class would fall into the state board's purview.
I think Dr. Grant has shared that she would like to look at the graduation requirements sometime later in the year. So I think that would be a question for that.
Awesome.
I would agree with Kathleen with that, because I know that the portrait of a graduate is coming up, and I work with OSSE as they map out graduation requirements. And Dr. Grant has expressed that it was important to get the standards first before we make requirements for things.
If I can say one thing, sorry. Going into my senior year, I found that the requirements, specifically US government and DC history, having those be whole classes made it really difficult to fit in AP classes and things like that that I really wanted to take. I couldn't take AP government and I couldn't take AP psychology because I didn't have space in my schedule because there were so many classes that were required. It might be unique to my school, but I find that having those be full classes really complicates things and makes it difficult.
Thanks.
I don't know if Taya's ran into the same thing at basis, but
Oh, we definitely have with like our entire curriculum is pretty much just AP courses once you get past 8th grade. So I know my friends and I always say that like we wish we had DC history and we wish we had like financial literacy and classes like that. I definitely think it'd be hard to fit into our already established schedules. And I don't know how that would work with like other charter schools. But I think it would still be good if we had it required, just so that kids still have that basic financial literacy knowledge, especially going into the real world. So I think it'd be good to have as a requirement, but maybe like a half class, not as a full class, like Ben was saying, just to make it less stressful.
Yeah, I think we definitely, I've heard before sort of similar that like we don't want to add requirements if we're not like we don't want to just like keep adding and adding if we're not sort of finding some way to balance that. So yeah, I appreciate that.
May I weigh in on this real quick too, Kathleen? I really want to echo what our student representative said on this because, for some schools, particularly ones with the longer periods where you can take fewer classes, putting another specific requirement in there that you have to do to graduate can be problematic because then it reduces other classes. What I would much rather see them do, rather than add this as a graduation requirement, is to build it into a panoply of different classes, the curriculum as they build up then to graduating. So there wouldn't be that you'd have to take like 0.5 of a class on this or even a full class to graduate, but that level of instruction would be integrated into other important classes that you need to take as requirements. And then you have a base of financial literacy when you graduate. Because if you start making these things individual requirements, a lot of the AP classes that we want to be able to let our students take, or even students that don't want to do that but want to go do career and technical education, are going to be then bogged down by very specific requirements to take individual classes. And I don't think that's a good approach. So I would support definitely waiting on it and then preferably not having any more, like just call out requirements for these types of classes.
So what we could do is sort of add in as sort of like a question. So rather than like a specific piece of feedback. Because my understanding is I think this is supposed to be a standalone course, but we can ask OSSE to, share whether that is their intention or not. And like include that in the final.
One thing that I hope everybody is aware of, but is that there aren't any standards about how many classes students take every day or how long the periods are. And so we need to get clarification from OSSE about how they're going to approach this anyway. I mean, I think it could be in what I would call an advisory, a quarter course as an elective, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in the 12th grade. It could be in the 11th grade. Probably.
Yeah, I'll add in a point about getting clarification. And then the one sort of point on here that I wanted input was, I know, Ben, you said that you thought that a standard on the gig economy was missing. And I pointed out that there's nothing that explicitly mentions FAFSA, and like given the billing council right now, where there was a lot of talk about like wanting to raise awareness about FAFSA and how to do it, that should be sort of in there. But there was a number of other things that are in the national standards for personal financial literacy, which are used by a lot of different people, and these are based on that didn't end up in the draft. And so I wanted to hear whether members wanted to either ask about why or to suggest that any of these be added back in.
Yeah, I'm actually more and more swayed by what Representative Yarkin shared around thinking about the operational trade-offs, right? I think there's always more theoretical improvements we could be making to all standards, but the trade-off is quite high, right? In terms of the more we add onto this, rather than prioritizing what is required versus, hey, this is a need to have, this is a nice to have, this is a recommendation. It makes every addition
you feel like any
actually
of these are
really
need to have.
right. So that would be my now top line recommendation back, actually, which is if they can, as they think about these standards, right? And I highlighted this in the email I sent to you and the co-chairs. I think there are a few things that are absolutely operationally need to have, like how do you do your taxes, right? And then there's a lot of the theoretical pieces that, do I think that we should equip our students with all of these skills? 100%. Is that worth the trade-off of, pulling someone out of a, making sure you are able to read before you graduate? I'm not sure, right? And so understanding what Aussie's take is on what is absolutely need to have would change how I would answer that question you just asked, Kathleen, which is, if we're to add all the things that other financial literacy standards also include, what is the operational trade-off there? And
So I guess
what is
it's
a
not,
recommendation?
like, it's not like all other financial literacy standards. This is the standards that like the draft was based on these explicitly.
Right. Understood. Yep.
Yeah.
But I think that's the communication there is a two-way street, right? So highlighting that question for Aussie so that as we move forward with these standards, we can kind of clarify what is, a need to have versus what a nice to have piece of content would be to use Representative Chang's language.
Okay. So I can frame that as like a question in the.
Yes. All right. Want to continue being mindful of time. Any of the final things we need to do for financial literacy before we move on to social emotional learning?
I think we also need to vote on this one.
Okay,
So, like,
Patterson, you want to call the vote?
Sure, I'll call the vote. Representative Chang,
Aye.
Representative Williams,
Aye.
Representative Goulet,
Aye.
Representative Yarkin,
Aye.
Representative, I'm going through Washington,
Aye.
and Representative Patterson, aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you. And thank you, Kathleen. Okay. To open it up for the social emotional learning standards, I want to start with a question. Is someone able to kind of summarize? I'm unclear as to what the timeline is for these standards. I feel like they were just recently dropped on us, and I'm not sure kind of what the timeline is.
Yeah, so the timeline is Aussie has posted it on their website. Kathleen shared it with the staff. Their goal is to have a vote in May of 2024. So there is not anything that is urgent, January, February, and they'll be doing a set of revisions. Jen has posted the link in the chat there. So it details a timeline that goes out until early summer with implementation in the next school year.
I appreciate that. So given that, and given that there are 5 additional things on our agenda, I want to just motion to kind of table them while also giving people a moment if you want to comment. But if there are no comments, I motion that we move forward.
Yeah, so the sort of intention we discussed with these was not to like do the level of feedback, but because the public comment period is going to be closing before our next meeting, probably just to see if there's any initial impressions or questions we want to raise with Aussie to get clarity on them, whether that is like while you're sharing them or while you're starting to look at them, so that you can have that context that I think we have a little bit less of because we haven't gotten a presentation about these, whereas we got like they presented to us about financial literacy before we saw them. So is there anything that you're sort of wondering or need to know in order to like inform your review?
For me, not at this point. Ted, do you have your hand up?
My question was similar to Ben's from the financial literacy standards. So is this supposed to, well, is the social and emotional learning standard supposed to build a framework for a separate class?
I don't think so, but I don't really know. So I think we should ask Aussie.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Any other points of clarification before we move on? All right. So I'm going to take us to the artificial intelligence roundtable, debrief and follow-up. Anyone want to weigh in on their thoughts or reactions to the panel before we move into additional recommendations?
I'll just say very, very quickly. I attended, it was a great meeting. I learned a lot as a person who is not not as aware of what artificial intelligence and how it works and the potential of it. It was a very good meeting, and I look forward to just engaging them more. It was just a great meeting.
Thank you, Representative Hobson.
I know I sort of, when we checked in beforehand, mentioned that during a previous working session, Aussie had said they were forming an exploratory committee on artificial intelligence. And that maybe it would make sense for the committee to ask leadership for an update or ask Aussie for an update at some point. So that we're not like doing double work and stuff.
Kathleen, when you say they're forming a committee, does that mean what they're going outside? They're going to appoint people to this committee, or we do we
all that I
that committee
know,
looks like?
all that I know is this is from a slide from the October working session. It says if it says sort of during the school year, Aussie will continue to move forward with forming an exploratory committee on artificial intelligence, winter 2023 to summer 2024.
Yeah,
I haven't heard anything about whether that is in motion, what it looks like. And so I don't want the committee to start doing work that is already being done.
I might be able to speak to that a little bit. We've talked about that in our leadership meetings with the superintendent, and they were active on this before we started talking about it. So it's more than just an exploratory kind of a move right now. They've got feet on the ground with people coming and they're asking outside experts about it and stuff like that. So we're gonna share with them and probably pull from them for their things. So it's not just a pie in the sky kind of a thing. They're doing work on that right now.
So you're saying, and how are they going to engage us?
No, we'll be working with them.
Okay.
But it's not, and Representative Best knows about that now.
Okay.
We didn't know about.
That was going to be my next question, is how they're engaging him, because he's.
Yeah, but they've been working on it for a while.
Okay.
Because when we came back from the NASB conference, because they had like this guy who some of you, maybe Ben knows about code.org, I guess, which is like a real big time AI. He was a guest speaker there, but they've already consulted code.org as one of their partners. So they have people on working on that right now. They'll be very helpful for us in what we're doing.
Definitely. And the only new thing that I have to add on this topic was from Representative Best, where I'm not sure how the exploratory committee is different than like a task force, but Representative Best said that one of the main recommendations from the roundtable was to start a task force, and he wanted to get the committee's thoughts on whether or not he had approval to move forward with recommending a task force. So given his passion and given like the need to have like some elected representative be able to also lead that work, like I'm in favor of that. And I think it can
As am I.
look a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Representative Goulet, Chang, student representatives, are you in support of that idea as well, of a potential task force and giving Representative Best the leeway to be able to explore the possibilities there?
Absolutely.
Just for the notes so that we're clear, is how is this a separate thing from what OSSI's doing? How is the work going to be different? Like, do we know how to
Don't know
differentiate
yet.
that? Because I don't know if it's going to be productive to just say like, here's a task force if we don't know what that other context is. Because like a task force is a lot of work. So I just want to make sure that it's like,
I was at
So
his
Kathleen, I
meeting.
think what I heard them saying is that they're approving Representative Best to take this task force idea to the board to have a larger discussion. They're not approving the creation of a task force.
Correct.
okay.
Is that, but we talked about this yesterday in Representative Best meeting. Is that, shouldn't that be something that comes from his committee?
No, it's the opposite, because the content falls in our committee, even though like he has
Gotcha.
been, yeah.
Okay.
And then we could talk about it as a board as to what that looks like and
Yeah.
how that sits relative to the exploratory committee that OSSI is proposing.
Good.
That sounds good to me. Thank you.
Thank you both. All right, moving us into the recent teacher retention hearings and also the truancy situation. Representative Goulet, do you want to start us off there?
Sure. I mean, I'll speak of the truancy hearing, which I testified at. I'm just curious to see, and maybe Kathleen, you want to weigh in on this for us. I feel like we have a role here. It's a relatively small role, but I think an important one. Maybe it's just simply a resolution stating it. I mean, what I was hearing from the hearing, because I watched both the public testimony and then the follow-up government testimony, was that the DCPS and CFSA and other agencies are simply not doing what they should be doing already. They might catch a lot of these issues, long before they would get to the criminal justice system. I don't know what role more there is for OSSI to play here, but I feel like at some point we should weigh in. I do feel this is like a kind of a real crisis in the city, and I feel like the ball is kind of being dropped by DCPS. I know that's a bit out of our lane, but we should be weighing in, I think, on an educational matter of this importance. So, and I feel like it's like a state level problem. So it probably should be this committee that weighs in on it. I'm just trying to think what the right path is to do that. And I feel like it would be probably a state resolution that the members of this committee maybe co-introduce or something of that nature, just to kind of highlight some changes that we want to see on truancy. And maybe that we just need to follow up on what we already have is a big component of that. But I just kind of wanted people's thoughts on that, because I think this is the magnitude where the state board does need to weigh in, and I think it should be our committee that does so. But wanted to hear what other people thought.
Yeah, I think this
We
sort
worked
of,
on it yesterday, and in the meeting yesterday, and we're working on, it may be that we are going to have a panel in the January public meeting about not about the problem with truancy, but about how different organizations are successful with having students coming to school. So maybe you want to stick a pin in that right now, and you'll find out more about that at our business meeting or the working session at the beginning of January.
Yeah, I guess my comment was about how this sort of relates to the later agenda item around work planning. And when I sent out the sort of pre-work, and what I really want to encourage you to do is think about it starting from like the impact and the goal you want to have. So Representative Goulet, it sounds like you have kind of an idea, like a little bit of what you want that impact to be, but kind of like before deciding, let's do a resolution, think about, I want to see this change, and then working back from it to say what is strategically the best way for the committee to get that done. Because I think it'll help like everything overall be more organized and like working the most like efficiently towards the outcomes you all want to see and like the changes that you want to have in the space. So
Okay,
I
I'll be
think
glad to do that.
yeah, Representative O'Leary's idea about sort of listening to what kind of changes some places are able to implement and kind of like seeing what that goal can be and then working back from it.
Yeah.
To me sounds like a smart idea.
I just want to throw out something here, Representative Goulet. I think it's worth following up on and yeah, interested in what we hear in the panel. One thing that at least the research that I'm looking at shows over and over again is most of the interventions are incremental, right? And just like moving the needle slightly for kids who were not the like biggest culprits or victims, let's say, right, of this. But the number one reason continues to be over and over across the country for all the surveying that it's relevance of curriculum that is the number one driver for truancy, which is actually kind of squarely in what we do.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, if we were to, I'm expecting, I don't know who the panelists are in January, Dr. O'Leary, but I'm expecting that most of those are going to be incremental changes, right? Like we know from the DME's task force, right, that I think is a really interesting finding that when there is violence in a neighborhood, student attendance in that neighborhood goes down for the short time afterwards. Like, but it's statistically significant and so tiny relative to the total number of students, right? So if we're going to hear interventions like that, I want to know what they are, but it doesn't quite get to the heart of the problem for me, which is our kids don't find school relevant anymore, and that is a huge problem. That I also I agree with Representative Goulet. I think it's something that we ought to be thinking about and tackling.
Yeah, and to just jump in and to connect what the three of you had said is I agree with all of those things. And to me, so to underscore your point, yes, relevance of curriculum, critical root cause, but also in terms of how the city is handling it. And to Kathleen's point, like we want students to be in school, right? And to do that right now as a city, we have a gap between what DCPS is doing and then what CFSA and other agencies are doing or not doing. And one proposed goal that I think we could follow up on in the new year would be to clarify the roles and responsibilities of other district agencies in the truancy and attendance policies, because judging from the hearing and then talking with a couple of council members, there seems to be gaps in what steps are being taken or not taken after DCPS follows up with families if they miss 10 days of school. And there's not much being done after that to then make sure that problems don't get worse. Any additional things with regards to the retention hearing? There was a recent bill, I think, that's been voted on in the council around that. I did not see anything in it around impact. But just wanted to kind of get people's sense on that.
I would say the same thing about like whatever sort of recommendations or projects that the committee wants to propose, think about like that end goal first, like what change do you want to see, and then work back from that.
Got it. Okay, so to move us along, the next item is a proposed resolution on the high school voter registration contest. I'll be sending this out tomorrow, but I wanted to kind of make sure that everyone was aware of the idea. So essentially, I was approached by some of the directors of the National League of Women Voters, and they had said that many states require schools to help register young people and that it's wildly successful. But to not just do it on a this teacher, this school or piecemeal basis, but to do it in a more systemic campaign. So they want to try to sponsor a contest in this upcoming primary season in which they disseminate materials that they know have been proven to work, and a lot of strategies around identifying point people in both DCPS and charter high schools, to make sure that we're having conversations with like 16-year-olds and above around what are the steps to register to vote, how do you become an informed voter, what does doing research for an election look like, how do you access your social security number, what does it mean to choose a party, what's the difference between a primary election and a general election, so all that type of like voter education work. And then they essentially want to be able to hold like a pizza party for the schools that register above like 90% of students to be able to register to vote. And then also to support teachers in schools with navigating challenges around why some people don't register to vote. So they want to work at this collaboratively. I'm still in conversation with them to clarify like what the state board's role would be, because they really want the mayor or the deputy mayor of education to kind of take this on. So I'm wondering in our resolution if we can, show support for this idea and then ask the deputy mayor to be able to also co-sign and sign on to this contest to be able to help drive voter turnout and more so voter registration, I'm sorry, which would lead to voter turnout amongst high school students. Thoughts, reactions, or questions at this point?
Have you asked the deputy mayor?
They have talked with them. He was amenable to it, but he wasn't able to give them a firm commitment. So they went to him first, and then he directed them to us. And so I'm now trying to see what level of support we have to then give them the confidence to go back to the deputy mayor.
Yeah,
Okay.
top line, it makes all the sense. I wonder what the trade-off is. What is the downside?
I don't see it.
I have a thought, but I also see Taya's hand, and I think that was up first. I want to make sure that she gets.
I'll go after Representative Washington. Go ahead, Taya.
Thank you. I think it's a great idea. My school does high school voter registration campaigns, and they try to do it once a year. And we always get a lot of interest from the students. I only had one question though. So would the resolution be supporting like the Women's League of Voters contest specifically, and like maybe that having that annually, or would it be supporting like a separate kind of implementation of voter registration and like having maybe like a fair, like would it be a separate sort of
Right. My understanding is that I think initially, given that they're like experts in this and have materials and a lot of practice in other states, to like start with them sponsoring the first contest. And then my hope would be that we're then able to kind of reflect on that, get student input, school input, other input, and see how we might want to move forward after that.
Thank you.
Okay. So I just wanted to be clear. So we're just in the resolution, we're supporting them conducting the contest, correct?
Correct.
Logistically, they're going to handle all the logistics as far as how it works,
Yes,
how
they,
information is disseminated, like all that information. The league is going to do that.
I'm clarifying a couple pieces on that. They have a set of like best practices of like how they do outreach to schools.
Okay.
So my hope would be that they lead that too. But then I've sent a couple emails asking for clarity on if they would, what other support they might need from like the state board or the deputy mayor. But I think
Are they asking us to support in the sense of advertising it, through social media, those type of things? Just kind of branding it for them or with them.
I think that'd be my guess. I can't I want to be more confident in confirming that, but yes, that's been talked about. I want to kind of get it in writing.
Okay. I'm supportive. I just need, some clarification in how it's going to actually be operated. But other than that, I'm supportive of it.
Thanks, Rep. President.
My piece of feedback would just to be when framing it kind of as a contest for schools, to be cognizant about how schools with like higher levels of immigrant and potentially undocumented students, that might affect turnout, and like not necessarily wanting to punish those schools because they have a lower level of students feel uncomfortable or can't do that. And so I don't know if that means like don't do it, but I think that's something to be mindful of while like planning.
Definitely. That's a great point, Kathleen. And that's something that I did talk with them about. And they said, like, so DC is one of the unique places where registration for non-citizens, like they are eligible in local elections. And the Board of Elections has already said that there's going to be an online registration form in early 2024 for the primary. So they've kind of thought about that, and that can be one way of then like making people who are immigrants or voting for the first time less fearful of being able to register to vote. And I see
it's a real selling point to let people know that they let students know that they can take part in the process and they won't be punished for it. I agree with what Kathleen said about that, because that's all I was thinking about it was Cardozo, and because a lot of those students are not documented. But the fact that they can vote in local elections is something I'm sure they don't know, and that would be a real plus for us, just to be part of the process, to pass out that kind of information.
Right. And then I see a hand up for, is that Director Butler?
Yes, I would just say in instances like this, I mean, separate from the resolution I think is definitely something. But once you all decide if this is an activity that the state board should take on, then we're more than happy to work with the League of Women Voters to like do the planning and stuff and out the details once the committee and you all make a decision.
Thanks. So I think in terms of next steps, and feel free to weigh in, anyone, is that there seems to be consensus that we're supportive of the initiative, a need for clarity around the particular asks of the state board. And then at that point, a conversation as to what the role of the state board might be in a formal partnership with them on this initiative. Is that what, am I hearing that correctly? Great, I see some heads nod. The only other proposed resolution before we get into 2024 strategic goals and meeting schedule topics is that I did send around a resolution to follow ups on Ms. Shelton, who is a teacher at Czech. She had talked about the parental leave rights of male students. So essentially there were three things that were in the resolution just around making sure that they have approved absences that are on par with female students, and making sure that there's equity with regards to documentation so that students who are, staying home with a sick child or who are going to a doctor's checkup are getting excused absences and are able to make sure that those instances don't count against their attendance and that they can still get access to the work that they need at school. So I wanted to kind of get the student representatives and then also Representative Goulet and Patterson, your sense on if you're in support of that resolution.
I am, yes. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
I'm
am I.
also definitely in support of it. Oh.
Wonderful. And if you have additional pieces of like feedback, just feel free to respond to the email that I sent out. Representative Patterson, any questions or on that resolution as well?
No, I have no further questions.
Thanks. All right, so moving us forward to the last two items before we adjourn. Although Jen, I do see your hand up. Do you want to jump in?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify for the committee as the next step. Kathleen and I can take both resolutions and kind of put them in our format and everything, create a SharePoint version, and that's the version that we will put into Dropbox for discussion at the working session.
That'd be great. And then I'll make sure that you have a draft of the high school voter registration contest by tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so strategic goals and work planning and then the meeting schedule. I say we talk about the meeting schedule first, and then move back to strategic goals and work planning. Representative Chang did jump off the call, but Representative Patterson, Goulet, Yarkin, and Washington, we were hoping to be able to identify, at least in these next couple months of like January, February, March, a particular meeting time so that we can just plan around it.
And just being cognizant of the fact that the committee makeup may change for next month, depending on the leadership elections.
Right.
I think Representative Chang did share his availability for January. So I think if we can decide on that and then say like at January, we'll think about like once the new committee is established, if there are any changes, we can decide for the rest of the year.
What did his availability look like in January, Kathleen?
Let me pull it up. He said 7 to 9 a.m. or 5 to 7 p.m. on weekdays is ideal.
Are we able to meet on weekends?
I would prefer not to.
Let's be
I don't
clear, the staff
know.
is not meeting on weekends.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If you want to run the Zoom by yourself.
Understandable. I just saw that. I was like, whoa. Okay. So he didn't give a particular day. He or weekday. He just gave a time frame. Representative Patterson or Goulet, any particular day that works best for you?
I mean, days of the week that work better for me are usually, probably Monday or Wednesday or Monday or Tuesdays usually, if it's afternoons, but if we can find a time to work, as long as I can fit it in, with the work here, I can make it happen. So I'm pretty flexible. Like you suggest 4 or 5 dates, I guarantee you one will work for me.
Thanks. What are your thoughts, Representative Patterson?
I'll just add that with like noticing the meetings, if you can decide by January 3rd, we can meet the week of January 16th. So I think like because next week we'll be out, we'll start looking at like the 16th and onward would be when we could schedule the meetings.
Okay. So I'm wondering, the public meeting for January, is it the 17th?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So in alignment with like what Representative Goulet said there for Mondays, would like Representative Patterson, would that Monday afternoon time work for you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so why don't we do not like I'm gonna propose the 22nd, Monday the 22nd. And then why don't, for right now, maybe we can see if the committee make up changes in January, but we can kind of just tentatively schedule like the third Monday of each month from like at 5 o'clock. Does
I
that
can do
work?
Mondays.
Does that work?
It work for me, depending on the members.
Okay, Representative Goulet, is that okay with you tentatively right now?
Yeah, tentatively works well. If anything comes up, I'll let you guys know so you can plan.
Thank you. Great. And then the last item is just our work plan for 2024, like strategic goals as well. So I know we've been at it for almost 2 hours, but if we can identify some key goals before we leave, then we can kind of follow up on how to plan, how to allocate those according to the months in the new year.
And I just want to reiterate my suggestion to like start with your impact and then work backwards rather than saying like, I don't want to like, it's going to make it sound like I'm calling Representative Best out, but this is just the example that's coming to my head. Like rather than saying task force, let's like start with the goal and see if that's the best approach, or if like a resolution is the best approach, or if we need to do research to do that. Or if we should do an op-ed and like what is strategically the most important thing. So I know people like flagging a little bit, but I would suggest we start with that impact so that we know like what you want to be working towards, and then we can like work out the details after that. Just like cohesive.
Kathleen, that is music to my ears. I want to echo what you're saying. That's the way to do good oversight, is you come out with what you need as a product, and then you figure out how you get there. So I 100% support that. And I think you make a great point. I'll try to put some notes together for the group on the truancy, because I think that's an issue that we really should focus on. And I liked what Representative Chang said about that being right in our lane, with making sure that the curriculum is engaging to students so that they want to stay and participate, amongst other issues. So that sounds great to me. I like your strategy, and I'll put together a game plan, assuming I'm still a member of this great committee come January with whatever realignment we do.
Thank you, Representative Goulet. Ted, while you're here, any items come to mind that are important for us to take up in the new year?
Not at
Yes,
this
asking me, or who'd you say? Taya?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say not at this moment, but I will definitely check back with some of my peers and let you guys know at our next meeting.
Thank you. And then Director Butler, I see your hand.
Yes, my hand is up. I do know that Representative Chang is not here. But I did do my one-on-one with him, and one of the questions that I asked all the folks who did one-on-ones with me is the policy work that they're interested in digging more into in 2024. And so I just felt like it was important to share it here because I think it aligns with your committee's work. And so he really wanted to do more along the lines with making sure that we dig in as deeply with the math as we have with literacy, but building a greater board knowledge and competency on the topic. Because he doesn't show if that foundation exists yet, the way it does for literacy, because there are lots of different math curriculums. And so he thought that having a goal centered around building that breadth of knowledge and depth for the state board so that they can do deeper work would be very helpful. And then he was also wanting to think about, is there work that we can do? Because he really wanted to fight to deepen our engagement with the librarians, particularly around media training and the social studies standards that were voted on last year. Like, are there opportunities for us to more deeply connect them either with OSSE or with others who are thinking about curriculum in the coming school year as it relates to like media literacy, what's a good source, what's not a good source, and how? Like finding an opportunity to deepen our engagement with them or more deeply connect them with OSSE so that, you know, we sort of play in the role of convener, maybe connector in that space.
That's good
And
to
he
know.
also raised in the email that he sent ahead of time, potentially sort of picking up one of the recommendations from Mary Levy's previous studies she's done for us around teacher retention. So going back to look at those and digging deeper there.
Got it. Yeah, I think to like honor what you had said around like the impact goals, Kathleen, I'm gonna need a little more time to think about this. I'll take that seriously so that we can be effective in the new year.
And for me, one of the things I want to see, and we may have raised it, and if I missed it, I apologize, around school nursing. There is a lot of concern around nursing, our ability to have nurses, what that looks like. I know there is a shortage as with teachers, but what type of impact we want to do around school nursing.
We didn't say that, but we've added it now. Or no one else had said that. So.
Okay, that's one that I want to. I just keep hearing it from our community a lot. People that I've engaged, they're very concerned about it. Another issue came up about our I guess our contract or who we're using and stuff like that. So there's a lot of concern around school nurses and our ability to have them in our schools, how we're sharing them, what that looks like. So just to dig a little bit deeper into how we provide that for our communities across both sectors.
Right. That brings us to new business. Any additional items before we adjourn today?
This is just really quick. At the January working session, Jen and Malaya will be doing a presentation around the annual report. And I'll be writing up the section for the committee. So just to start thinking about things you would like to highlight from the committee that over the past year.
And you can kind of look at the templates from previous years of what it looks like, Ben, Representative Williams. And we can get together and start thinking about what that looks like for us and what was accomplished, okay? You and I can meet on that.
That sounds good. All right. Thank you all for your attention and engagement today. We're just about a little over 2 hours. But we got a lot done, a full agenda. And any clarifying things before we adjourn today?
I think we're good, sir.
All right. Hope everyone has a great break and a happy holiday. And I will look forward to seeing everyone in the new year.
Thanks everyone for staying.
Thank you all.
Happy holidays. Have a good night.
Yeah, happy
Holidays.
holidays.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.